Taco Bell is an extraordinary outlier by every measure. It's a fast food chain that boasts a deeply passionate fan base. It enjoys a reputation for its reliability, speed, and accuracy. And when it comes to business, Taco Bell has grown at such a breakneck pace over the past 20 years that it outperforms giants like McDonald's, Burger King, and KFC in per-store earnings. And Taco Bell is so popular that it's one of the few chains whose per-store earnings have actually stayed ahead of inflation. Taco Bell boasts some of the highest ever store-level profit margins ever reported in not just fast food, but also in the broader restaurant industry. Taco Bell's modern renaissance is a miracle in an era where fast food chains all follow the same cookie-cutter playbook of cost-cutting and chasing international expansion to cover up domestic decline, like we covered in the past with KFC, Popeyes, McDonald's, and Starbucks. Taco Bell has uniquely remained a chain by Americans for Americans. The brand has such insignificant presence overseas that Taco Bell can't use international expansion as a crutch like the rest of the fast food industry has. Business is a zero-sum game where every decision is connected, every action has a cause and effect, and the rise of one brand contributes to the fall of another. Taco Bell is part of Yum! Brands, which is the same company that owns Pizza Hut and Kentucky Fried Chicken. In this episode, we'll cover the rise of Taco Bell, its strategy, and why Taco Bell is the final missing puzzle piece behind the downfall of KFC and Pizza Hut, and how their struggles in fried chicken and pizza have molded Taco Bell to what it is today, for better and for worse. In the 80s and 90s, Taco Bell, Pizza Hut, and Kentucky Fried Chicken were all owned by the CPG conglomerate PepsiCo. PepsiCo made millions during the 20th century selling Mountain Dew, Pepsi, Doritos, Ruffles, and Lay's. But in the 60s, the runaway success of McDonald's under Ray Kroc turned fast food into the next American gold rush, and PepsiCo moved in quickly to join the chase. PepsiCo bought out Taco Bell, Pizza Hut, and KFC, and by the late 90s, the commercial collective momentum became so great that PepsiCo spun out its fast food division into its own separate independent company by the name of Yum! Brands. This way, PepsiCo could concentrate on its snacks and sodas, while Taco Bell, Pizza Hut, and KFC could reach their full potential as an independent company. This deep-rooted history is exactly why even 50 years later, you're never able to order Coca-Cola at Taco Bell, Pizza Hut, and KFC. Your only options for drinks are still only Pepsi, Mountain Dew, and other PepsiCo brands. Yum! Brands was led by David Novak, a fiery PepsiCo executive who made it clear that the mission was to take down McDonald's. The Golden Arches was public enemy number one, and the goal was to chip away at the market leader through the combined efforts of KFC, Pizza Hut, and Taco Bell. McDonald's was king, but it was progressively under siege as the burger category became saturated with the entry of Burger King, Wendy's, and tens of other regional chains. KFC, Pizza Hut, and Taco Bell were all positioned to win emerging, adjacent, less competitive categories, but that didn't stop David from publicly measuring the performance of each brand against McDonald's. Like in families with multiple children and portfolio companies with multiple subsidiaries, there's usually favoritism where one brand gets more support and investment than the others. But for Taco Bell, it wasn't a case of neglect, as there were pretty much the same number of Taco Bell stores in the US by the late 90s as there were Pizza Huts and KFCs. Through the 70s to 90s, Taco Bell was the leading Mexican fast food chain, but compared to burgers, fries, pizzas, and fried chicken, tacos and burritos were unfamiliar, exotic foreign foods to most Americans at the time. Taco Bell faced the challenge of having to introduce a new culture and cuisine while inventing simplified fusion items that would appeal to the American palate, like telling consumers to think of fajita wraps as Mexican steak sandwiches. The challenges extended beyond product. Taco Bell struggled with marketing, unsure of how much it should embrace its cultural origins, whether or not it should compete on quality or novelty, if the best experience was to get dine-in or takeout, and if their target customer was families, adults, or children. The chain burned through various messaging over the years like the fresh food place, run for the border, musical jingles, and even a Spanish-speaking Chihuahua. As a result, Taco Bell was the clear underperformer and lagged behind KFC and Pizza Hut in Yum! Brands' portfolio. Business and politics are intertwined. In the 1980s, while Taco Bell was trying to figure out how to win over Americans, across the sea, a man by the name of Deng Xiaoping had just taken power in China. Deng Xiaoping did what his predecessor refused to do, which was to embrace globalization and to open up China to the world, to foreign investment, and to American businesses for the first time in decades. To David at Yum! Brands, the opening of China was more than just an emerging market. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to beat McDonald's and to become the American fast food chain in the world's biggest market. The chance for Yum Brands to be the first mover in China and in the neighboring four dragons of Asia in Singapore, South Korea, Taiwan, and Hong Kong was simply too great to pass up. The long-term potential in Asia, whether measured by GDP or by population, would eclipse anything anyone had ever achieved in the US. This was precisely when and why Yum Brands shifted their focus over to international expansion over domestic consumers. Just like the race to beat the Nazis to the atom bomb, Yum Brands, at David's direction, launched into an all-out arms race to beat McDonald's in China. But David could only bring his best hitters and proven brands overseas, and those were KFC and Pizza Hut. Mexican food was not an easy sell to most Americans, and trying to get the Chinese behind tacos would be even harder. The first KFC in China opened in 1987, 3 years ahead of McDonald's. By the 2000s, there were 700 KFC and Pizza Hut stores in China compared to McDonald's 460, and then by the mid-2010s, there were 4,000 to McDonald's 1,300. But this is an episode about Taco Bell. Why are we talking about China, KFC, McDonald's, globalization, and Mao? It's because of this top-down, decade-long arms race where David was laser-focused on being the first to win China that Taco Bell could thrive. Most of the company focus and investment went to supporting the war overseas with KFC and Pizza Hut, and there was little chance that Taco Bell would join in on the Eastern Front. Beyond the obvious differences in cuisine, Taco Bell was unique as a fast food chain where most customers come in at lunch with the aim of getting something that's light on the wallet and in the stomach. Most orders for KFC and Pizza Hut, in contrast, take place at dinner, where the order sizes are bigger and thus the profits are higher. And the entire point of expanding into China and Asia was to maximize profit. Since Taco Bell was left out of this arms race, this lowered expectations and pressure on the Mexican fast food chain to produce massive profits or to rapidly scale even in the US. This omission gave Taco Bell's leaders that room to breathe, to execute, to strategize, to create winning products, and to find the right marketing that would propel the company into long-term success in the United States. In the late 90s, Taco Bell by no means was a disaster, but the inconsistency in sales demonstrated that the chain was nowhere close to its mass market potential. In 2000, David put in a new leader at Taco Bell who had proven his ability to deliver that long-term success by the name of Emil Brolick. As an executive at Wendy's, Emil had done the improbable. He had been personally mentored by the founder of Wendy's himself, and he had taken market share away from McDonald's through the 80s and 90s by focusing relentlessly on operations and introducing differentiated products like chili, square patties, fresh never frozen beef, and a value menu. If there was anyone who could turn around Taco Bell with the same approach, it would be Emil. Emil ran Taco Bell for 6 years, and during his tenure, food and drink sales at Taco Bell grew from a shaky $5 billion in 2000 to $6.6 billion by 2006. Emil mandated that Taco Bell products should be portable, easy to eat, on the go as a fast lunch or casual dinner, and he fully ditched the fork and knives plated entrees of the past. Under Emil, Taco Bell launched now iconic products like chicken quesadillas, grilled stuffed burritos, cheesy gordita crunch, Mountain Dew Baja Blast, 7-layer nachos, the Crunchwrap Supreme, and the value menu. Emil's biggest accomplishment was centering Taco Bell on value, to be the fast food chain that would give you the most amount of food for the least amount of money. But it wasn't about selling everything as cheap as possible. There was an intentional balance between value and cost. When Emil saw that customers weren't buying as many drinks as before in the early 2000s, the easy answer would have been to lower the prices of beverages at Taco Bell. But instead, the Taco Bell team went back to its former parent PepsiCo and created an exclusive soda flavor in Mountain Dew Baja Blast to give customers a reason to buy drinks at Taco Bell. For the first time in decades, Taco Bell, under Emil, had one single unified consistent message in its marketing. The chain challenged Americans to, quote, think outside the bun, to consider Taco Bell as an exciting alternative to boring sandwiches and burgers, and to appreciate the variety that it had to offer. In the interim, while the market was still reacting to these new products, Emil hyper-focused on optimizing speed and accuracy for Taco Bell's operations. At this point in the 2000s, Yum Brand was still deep in the arms race to beat McDonald's in China. David was pleased with the consistent positive growth that Taco Bell had achieved under Emil, but he still believed that the brand was too immature to talk about expansion. While sales had gone up in the 6 years of Emil's leadership, the number of Taco Bell restaurants in the US had gone down in the same period. While the number of KFC and Pizza Hut stores in the US had also declined, their losses in domestic earnings were largely offset by the profits from their overseas expansion. If Taco Bell could not even scale domestically, there was no point in talking about taking it outside of the United States. Even with the newfound success, Taco Bell remained low on the list of company priorities. In the 2000s, KFC and Pizza Hut unexpectedly regressed in domestic earnings, and investors were spooked. David was forced to pull back from the arms race overseas and address the regression of KFC and Pizza Hut at home as priority number 2 over Taco Bell. It was in this period where David fired Cheryl Batchelder from KFC, who would go on to find her redemption at Popeyes. But once again, Taco Bell benefited from all this by staying out of the spotlight. As Yum Brands honed in on KFC and Pizza Hut, Taco Bell got the space to continue its steady and quiet execution. David still recognized Emil's accomplishments, and in 2006, David promoted Emil to the portfolio level so that he could also help out Pizza Hut and KFC. In Emil's place, David appointed Greg Creed, the marketing leader who had spearheaded the Think Outside the Bun campaign. Greg ran Taco Bell for the next 9 years as the president and CEO. While Emil was a product-oriented leader who believed in achieving success through R&D and operations, Greg was an old-school marketer who took Taco Bell to new heights by leveraging branding, pricing, packaging, intuition, and consumer insights in ways that Emil could not. Metaphorically, Emil laid the foundation and Greg built the house. Under Greg, Taco Bell grew from $6 billion in food and drink sales worldwide from 2007 to $9 billion by the time of his exit in 2015. Under Greg, Taco Bell released hit products like grilled taquitos, the Volcano Taco, the Blackjack Taco, the Beefy Crunch Burrito, the Doritos Locos Tacos, the Caramel Apple Empanada, the Quesarito, and entered into breakfast with the AM Crunch Wrap, waffle tacos, and biscuit tacos. But just talking about the new products alone doesn't quite capture the impact of Greg's contributions. Greg remained focused in positioning Taco Bell as the leader in value in regards to portion to price ratio and quality to price ratio. Whenever Taco Bell would promote a full-priced core item, like the Crunch Wrap or the Cheesy Gordita Crunch, the chain would either release or promote a cheaper secondary item, like the 99-cent Cheesy Bean Burrito, to reinforce to customers that they had options. They could get value at the high end or at the low end. Quote, "We don't discount core menu items at Taco Bell. We don't sell drinks for $1. We don't take a crunchy taco or a Crunch Wrap or a burrito and discount it. If we want value, we create products at that price point." One of the reasons Taco Bell has such good margins in sales is because if we need a $1 price point, we go and create products at $1 and then put them on the dollar menu. If you look around, most of our competitors discount their core menu items. You can buy 2 Big Macs for a certain price, or you can get Coke for $1 or fries for $2. I think it's a mistake. I really do. At Taco Bell, we don't discount core items because the downside is that one day you have to pay the piper and you have to take the price up. I feel supremely confident that Taco Bell is and will remain a value leader because we approach value not through a discounting of core products, but by actually creating products out of our 7 ingredients at the desired price point. And we can take them away and we can bring something else in. We don't touch the core that the customers love or the margins in our core business. Greg's not wrong. We've covered other fast food chains in past episodes where their leaders engage in this excessive discounting, like at McDonald's, KFC, and even Burger King, who discounted the Whopper so frequently that the product had lost all meaning by the mid-2010s. These tactics always helped improve sales in the short term, as the deals were simply too good to pass up. But even as customers would flock into stores for these discounts and the top line would improve, this approach in reality was very much the self-sabotage that Greg alluded to earlier. The core discounting over time ended up diluting each brand's pricing power, the same pricing power that the chain had worked so hard to build over so many decades. Customers would come in only for the discounts, they would consciously never pay full price, and by extension, they would devalue the product and the brand. In contrast, at Taco Bell, customers would still come in looking for cheap deals, but their options were always limited to the specific items that the chain had created, like a 79-cent cheese roll-up or the 99-cent bean burrito, which were all still profitable for the franchisee and the company at that price point. Greg's blend of product and pricing ensured that Taco Bell and its franchisees were always maintaining positive margins, even on items that sold for less than $1. Greg also experimented with packaging and pricing throughout his tenure by rearranging the existing products into different boxes and packs to give the customers the deals that they were looking for without destroying the established unit economics. By the mid-2000s, Americans had grown to enjoy Mexican cuisine, and Taco Bell faced greater competition from fast casual chains like Chipotle and Baja Fresh. But while the competition sold higher quality burritos and bowls for $8 to $10, Taco Bell was still the clear leader in value, where a single menu item rarely, if ever, went over $5. While Mexican cuisine had been a hindrance to Taco Bell's growth in its early years, it was now an asset in this period of intense consumer change. In the 2000s, Americans became health conscious, and the fast food industry was blamed as the primary source for the poor American diet. Nutritionists and even the US government at the time mistakenly shilled that fat was the problem and not carbs. Americans started to shun the fatty fried chicken of KFC, the greasy pizzas of Pizza Hut, and the oily fries of McDonald's. But since Taco Bell's foods by design are limited to a single dollop of sour cream or a light sprinkle of cheese, their products already had substantially less fat relative to most fast food. Americans could enjoy indulging in the carb-heavy foods of Taco Bell without as much guilt, and Greg didn't have to waste time and money putting lipstick on a pig like other fast food chains had to do, like McDonald's, with their short-lived salads, egg whites, and grilled chicken. While the Great Recession from 2008 to 2010 was a period of hardship for just about every business, the economic downturn actually cemented Taco Bell as a fast food leader in the US. Customers wanted deals more so than ever, they did more home cooking and less takeout, and the chain that gave the most food for the least amount of money won, and that was Taco Bell. At this point, Taco Bell had been honing in on value for 7 years straight throughout its menu and marketing, pricing, and packaging. Taco Bell launched Why Pay More, where customers could order a variety of products at and below the $1 price point that surpassed what any other fast food chain offered. Quote, "Why pay more" is resonating with customers in today's economic environment. Where else can you find a menu with 79 cents, 89 cents, and 99-cent price points, and with the great selection that we have? Our 98-cent cheesy double beef burrito has 38% more food and 30% more beef than McDonald's 99-cent double cheeseburger, so our customers realize it truly is great value. The Taco Bell brand is about value. People are constantly amazed at how much food you get and how little you have to pay and how many items you can get for that amount of money. We can take 1, 2, 3, or even 9 to 10 items, bundle them differently, talk about them differently, and get a whole lot of credit versus just taking our pricing down willy-nilly on a number of items. In this environment, there's no one that can really top what we have to offer. While food and drink sales at Pizza Hut and KFC in the US declined year after year through the Great Recession, Taco Bell instead was on a clear upwards tear. As more and more Pizza Huts and KFCs closed down, Taco Bell was actually hitting its stride, opening up more stores year after year in spite of the downturn. These results were not one-year wonders, as even on a per-location basis, the average Taco Bell was earning more than the average KFC and Pizza Hut. KFC and Pizza Hut were both effectively in domestic freefall by every measure, whether by locations, average store earnings, or by overall food and drink sales. In past years, Taco Bell had been the quiet, studious kid in the corner, overshadowed by its more famous siblings. By the early 2010s, Taco Bell was the crown jewel of the Yum brand's portfolio. The strong results of Taco Bell during the Great Recession gave David the confidence to start pushing the Mexican chain overseas, but the limiting factor was still the cuisine. In 2008 onwards, Taco Bell resumed international expansion, but did it slowly as the scope was limited to culturally compatible countries like Guatemala, Mexico, Dubai, Costa Rica, and Spain. The Americans beat the Nazis to the atom bomb, but found themselves years later back in a race against the Soviets. The same thing happened in fast food. Yum brands at this point in the early 2010s had surpassed McDonald's in China, but they now found themselves in yet another race against the Golden Arches in new and emerging markets like India, Brazil, and Russia. The success of Taco Bell in the US gave David the air cover to continue slamming the gas pedal on KFC and Pizza Hut overseas despite their poor domestic performance. Investors were a lot less concerned about the domestic decline of KFC and Pizza Hut, as Taco Bell's strong performance more than made up for their collective regression. As long as Taco Bell maintained its incredible growth in the US, David could press the advantage overseas for KFC and Pizza Hut without facing too much investor scrutiny or customer backlash back home. Think about it this way. If Yum Brands as a company just had Pizza Hut and KFC, it would have been a lot harder to get away with using international expansion as a way to cover up poor domestic results. But because there was Taco Bell, there was a third brand that was doing so well in the US, David could make this trade-off. He could concede market share in fried chicken and pizza at home in favor of winning the arguably more valuable international arms race for American fast food with the taco market in his back pocket. Quote, "The other thing that is really exciting about our international business is that our restaurants work a lot better because we do not have as much competition. That is a big advantage. In the United States, you have 30 major chains out there fighting every day. When we go abroad in most countries, there is a McDonald's and maybe a Burger King in some places, and it's just not as competitive. One of the big advantages we have at Taco Bell is that we have a 70% market share of a food category with no national competitor. We are more convinced than ever that Taco Bell is a Mexican-inspired powerhouse brand that owns value. And particularly, we want to drive home the fact that Taco Bell is our big US growth engine, accounting for over 60% of our US profits combined and a net grower of new units with lots of potential. The constraint with value is that if you want to add another $100,000 to $300,000 in sales per store per year, you have to broaden beyond your existing core audience. This many years in, Greg had a deep understanding of the Taco Bell consumer, and he had split them into two camps. One was the passionate power user who visited regularly and followed promotions religiously, and the other was the casual user who occasionally ate at Taco Bell. But between the casuals and the zealots, Greg refused to sacrifice one for the other in the pursuit of greater sales. In the early 2010s, Taco Bell changed up its central message from the confrontational think outside the bun to a more inspirational live más, to communicate that Taco Bell was more than just a place for cheap tacos and burritos and instead a unique culinary experience for all. To keep the power users happy, Greg maintained a steady flow of cost-efficient snacks, desserts, and promotions so that regulars would always find something exciting that didn't stretch their budget at every visit. And to win casuals, Greg opened up the menu with new premium offerings in an attempt to broaden appeal with Cantina Power Bowls and higher quality ingredients of black beans, corn salsas, and cilantro rice. The goal behind this was not to match the fast casual brands, but to show Americans that they could get a comparable product for half of what they were currently paying for at Chipotle or at Baja Fresh. The launch of the hit Doritos Locos Tacos in 2012 increased food and drink sales at Taco Bell's worldwide by $500 million in a single year, a product that, like Baja Blast 10 years ago, was only possible due to the deep history between Taco Bell and PepsiCo. Then, 2 years after the Doritos Locos Tacos, Taco Bell launched breakfast in 2014. Greg knew that the average American would be hesitant about eating Mexican food for breakfast, so the chain deliberately partnered with recognizable iconic brands like Tropicana, Cinnabon, and Seattle's Best to inject some institutional credibility and familiarity into its new breakfast offerings. Thanks to the expansion into morning sales on top of the strong existing late-night business, Taco Bell surpassed over $8 billion in 2014 without any of the crutches of international expansion. Greg's accomplishments with Taco Bell made him a star, and in 2015, David retired, and Greg was the natural choice to succeed him as CEO of Yum! Brands. By the time of his retirement and exit, David had successfully won the arms race from the measure of speed in blanketing China, India, and other parts of the world with as many KFCs and Pizza Huts as possible. But ruling and conquering are not the same thing, and as the new CEO of Yum! Brands, Greg had inherited a mess. In 2014, KFC and Pizza Hut in China, the same exact country that David had bet the farm on 2 decades ago, were struggling due to a series of highly public food safety scandals. This resulted in a significant loss of consumer confidence and investor scrutiny, as the same market that Yum! Brands had been using to offset the losses at home was now no longer posting that same radical growth. China was simply too big and too complex for a single Kentucky company to effectively and remotely manage 3 different fast food brands from. Under intense public pressure, Greg spun out the China business into its own separate company so that he and his team could solely focus on KFC, Taco Bell, and Pizza Hut in the US and everywhere else. There was hope that Greg could turn around Pizza Hut and KFC in the US like he had done for Taco Bell, but every action has a cost and every decision has trade-offs. David's decision to jump into the arms race against McDonald's in China back in the 90s resulted in a loss of Pizza Hut and KFC's competitive advantage in the US. During that period of intense international expansion, both brands simply coasted off their legacy and hoped that the sales would last at home. In contrast, Greg had been ruthless in honing in on Taco Bell's identity when he was CEO of Taco Bell. He had gutted anything that didn't fit, and he ensured that the pipelines were filled with products or promotions that would reinforce the Mexican chain's heritage and value play. These were all muscles that Taco Bell had built for many years, and Pizza Hut and KFC had not practiced since the 70s and 80s. While Taco Bell honed in on millennial males with a clear strategy in marketing and messaging, Pizza Hut and KFC had nothing of the sort. They were no longer as cheap and fast as their new rivals, and they had long lost the quality and even personality to compete with independent restaurants. Both KFC and Pizza Hut had become so bloated, so outdated, and so broad that they were no longer really good at anything or targeted at anyone. At first, Pizza Hut and KFC attempted to restore their quality with menu revamps, celebrity endorsements, and heavy advertising through the 2010s, but when that failed, both brands resorted to copying Taco Bell's proven value playbook. But without the right vision and application of value, Pizza Hut and KFC have only made things worse for themselves, as both brands are now in a race to the bottom, throwing out as much pizza, pasta, chicken, and drink for as cheap as possible at every moment. And the only way to keep prices low on core items without bankrupting franchisees is to cut corners and to cut costs, hence the ever-worsening quality of food that's being served at Pizza Hut and KFC in the US. To this day, there are fewer and fewer KFC and Pizza Huts in the US, and Taco Bell remains the only brand not to regress at home. And while hundreds of Pizza Huts and KFCs shut down every year in the US, Yum Brands still tries to offset these losses by opening up thousands of new stores overseas. And even though there are twice as many Pizza Huts worldwide as there are Taco Bells, Pizza Hut as a brand has contributed less and less profit, whereas Taco Bell has filled in those cracks. As Greg moved into his new role as CEO of Yum Brands, he appointed his protege, a man by the name of Brian Nichols, as the new CEO of Taco Bell. Brian would run Taco Bell for the next 3 years, from 2015 to 2018, and the chain would enjoy record growth from $9 billion in worldwide food and drink sales to nearly $11 billion. Brian carried on his mentor's work, launching the Naked Chicken Chalupa, the Quesalupa, a lineup of fancy Taco Bell Cantina stores that served beer and alcohol alongside the core menu items, and nacho fries. Under Brian, Taco Bell made even greater leaps into the millennial market as the first fast food company to roll out a mobile app, to actively encourage customization, and to release an official clothing line. By the time of Brian's exit in 2018, Taco Bell had scaled under his watch to over 6,500 stores in the US as the number of KFCs and Pizza Huts continued to fall. Restaurant-level operating margin, which is a measure of profitability for an average Taco Bell store, reached as high as 24%. To increase sales and profits while also scaling domestically is a tremendous feat for any fast food chain, and this accomplishment caught the eye of Taco Bell's longtime rival Chipotle. At the time, Chipotle had been suffering through a string of high-profile scandals related to food safety, and the company was in search of new leadership, and Chipotle moved quickly to poach Brian from Taco Bell. Brian to this day remains CEO of Chipotle, but interestingly enough has not brought the same product innovation and marketing prowess that he showed at Taco Bell. If anything, Brian has gone against his roots in aggressively limiting customization at Chipotle, doubling down on store profits even at the expense of worker retention, restricting menu expansion, and pushing an inferior mobile-first experience to maximize sales. Just 1 year after Brian's exit from Taco Bell, Greg himself retired from Yum Brands in 2019. Rather than appointing a marketing or product-oriented leader as CEO like they had done in the past, Yum Brands instead chose a numbers guy in David Gibbs as the new company's CEO. David Gibbs had climbed up the ladder at Yum Brands for the past 30 years and was CFO before being chosen for CEO. Predictably, the company has become more numbers-driven and less creative under David Gibbs, and Taco Bell has not been immune to these changes. The leaders that David Gibbs has appointed to run Taco Bell have been uninspiring and out of left field, to say the least. There was Mark King, the former sales executive who took credit for turning around Adidas in North America, when in actuality that success better belonged to Kanye West and UltraBoost. Despite spending 40 years working in sportswear and golf, Mark King was somehow seen as the right candidate to run the Mexican fast food leader that sells tacos and burritos to millennials. Mark's first moves were to cut the Mexican pizza and other fan favorites from the menu, like the double-decker, the grilled stuffed burritos, and potatoes, in order to cut costs and optimize profits. But none of these reductions actually meaningfully increased long-term profits for Taco Bell. The customer backlash to these changes were loud and furious, but these moves were actually much deeper than the standard clueless cost-cutting of corporate America. This is where all the time that we spent earlier understanding the dynamic at Yum Brands between KFC, Pizza Hut, and Taco Bell over the past 3 decades will all make sense. Taco Bell is now the safe asset in the portfolio. It's no longer just the crown jewel, but the workhorse that Yum Brands is betting everything on. At this point, the domestic decline of KFC and Pizza Hut is apparent to everyone by every conventional measure, and the various turnaround initiatives that each of these brands have attempted over the past decade have all failed. Pizza Hut historically contributed every year a full quarter of Yum Brand's profits, but just a decade later, the pizza chain accounts for just 16%, and that number has been steadily dropping every year. This is bad, but it's even more alarming when we consider the reality that this decline is still happening despite the relentless international expansion, where Pizza Hut continues to open up hundreds of stores overseas every year. We can see the same diminishing returns when we look at the average Pizza Hut store earnings in 2000, then 2013, and now 2022, where the average Pizza Hut earns less than it did 10 years ago and makes the least out of any major fast food chain. Pizza Hut is a growing liability for Yum Brands, especially because opening new stores overseas is really the only thing that's keeping the pizza chain afloat. In this day and age, there are no more arms race and no more emerging markets where Pizza Hut can project meaningful future growth from. KFC is in a better spot, but not by much. KFC's contribution to Yum Brands' profits have stagnated in the past decade, despite once again opening thousands of new stores overseas every year. There are 30% fewer KFCs in the US today than there were in the 90s, and at the current pace of decline, there will be 50% less KFCs within the next 20 years. The average KFC store makes less than it did 8 years ago, and the drop-off is actually worse when we factor in inflation. Taco Bell is the only brand that's going forward, while everyone else is going backwards. It's the only fast food chain that's holding its own in the US and can be counted on to grow. Without a passionate marketing or product leader to lead Taco Bell, like Emil, Greg, or Brian, the second best option at CEO will always be someone like Mark King, who won't mess things up, who won't rock the boat, who won't bring any wild ideas, but just be someone who's happy to get the job, to optimize for the bottom line, to keep things predictable and safe, and will do what he's told. Taco Bell in the past under Emil, Greg, and Brian was in a constant state of evolution of trying to find that next hit core item that would pull in casuals and power users like nacho fries, crunch wraps, Doritos Locos Tacos, and Baja Blast. But these days, Taco Bell is all about static optimization. It's no longer about invention, originality, insight, and intuition, but instead all about data, ROI, and maximization. Taco Bell is now all science, where every decision, price, promotion, and even product removal is a financial calculation designed to maximize profits or a play to collect the consumer data to inform a future financial decision. And as unappealing as this all sounds to us as customers, the reality is that Yum Brands as a company has almost no margin for error. Yum Brands' relevance in the US, its optics with investors, its public valuation, and its future growth prospects now all hinge on Taco Bell, the only brand heading up while everyone else is sliding back. The public backlash over the removal of the Mexican pizza showed Taco Bell that if they removed popular core items and then returned them as limited time offerings, they could generate hype and by extension rack in greater sales and guaranteed profits in a short period of time. Quote, "What we learned is that people really love individual items. So now for us, what other magical items have we removed that we can relaunch in a big way to capture people's interest or imagination?" It was a learning for us on how we can create this amazing buzz and then translate that to transactions in our business. We use digital not only to drive transactions, but to really engage our customers, so we ask them to vote on what products to bring back. But it's not just Mark saying this on his soapbox. This borderline obsession with numbers and data is part of the new culture being pushed down from the very top by David Gibbs. Quote, "There's a lot of reasons to be excited about what Taco Bell is doing in 2024 with all the impact that tech can have and the insights we're going to glean from data. In the long run, I think that companies that make the best use of the data generated from their digital loyalty programs will be the ones who find this to be a competitive advantage. That's why we're investing in the Easy Insights component underneath this. When we've done analysis at Taco Bell, every time we shift sales to digital, we see an increase in frequency and check size. If we were to go from somebody just using our app casually to then being a member of our loyalty program, we can control for other factors around their usage. We get richer data and an even better connection. This is why for our new menu items, the only way to order is if you're on the app and a member of our loyalty program. This is a huge contrast from Greg in the past, who as an old school marketer publicly rallied against this kind of numbers, short-term optimization thinking. Quote, "You can have all the data in the world, but if you either don't have a hypothesis or if you don't have any insight, then it is absolutely useless." And because everyone's pretty much got access to the same data, it comes back to who has the best instinct of what that data is telling them. That is what I fundamentally believe in. While Greg religiously refused investor demands to sell Baja Blast and other popular Taco Bell items in grocery stores under the belief that such a move would dilute the brand and weaken store sales, Taco Bell's new leaders have no qualms about turning a buck, selling bottles and packs of its signature sauces, seasoning, taco shells, and even beans at supermarkets everywhere. Still, the problem for Taco Bell is not squeezing dollars at home, as Americans continue to flock in for its exceptional value, and power users continue to passionately post about their satisfaction with the quote new products, which are ultimately the same items and ingredients, just packaged, portioned, and priced in slightly different ways than before. Instead, the obstacle today is international expansion. Taco Bell's value prop has not successfully carried overseas, where the Chinese and Europeans have collectively found the food to be too small and inadequate, as the expectations over there for American fast food is to have a proper, sit-down culinary meal and experience, not just a grab-and-go cheap eat. We can see this reflected in the dramatically slow overseas expansion for Taco Bell, and this only further strengthens the company's need to squeeze every dollar it can out of Americans until the international markets hopefully one day warm up to Mexican cuisine. This is why Taco Bell has changed so much. This is why customers are suddenly needing to pay $6, $7 or more for a core item like a chicken quesadilla, why there's suddenly manufactured scarcity throughout the menu, where popular items get removed but then reintroduced months later, why orders are being aggressively funneled into the mobile app, why the menu and ingredients are constantly undergoing regular consolidation, why the company is so intent on recycling old products versus creating new ones, and why Yum Brands is so obsessed with hiring executives with zero restaurant or hospitality experience from lifestyle sportswear companies to run Taco Bell. The price hikes, the subtle cost cutting, the artificial scarcity, and the lack of investment in genuinely new products at Taco Bell are all intentional decisions. Taco Bell's purpose these days is to maximize profits in the US and to use these stronger sales to subsidize and offset the poor sales of KFC and Pizza Hut in the US. In an alternate universe where KFC and Pizza Hut in the US are performing up to its standards, there would be no need for Taco Bell to engage in these tactics. And in a different reality where Yum Brands only owns KFC and Pizza Hut and doesn't own Taco Bell, the company's constant cheerleading of international expansion and winning the arms race against McDonald's in China, India, and other parts of the world would likely be a lot less meaningful. Investors would probably be far more critical looking at the poor performance of Pizza Hut and KFC in the US year after year. The constant failures by Yum Brands in strategy, execution, and personnel to turn around KFC and Pizza Hut in the US over the past 10 plus years would deservedly be under far greater scrutiny. With all the data we've covered so far, it's not difficult to imagine how much worse some of these US numbers would be without the presence of Taco Bell. In short, without Taco Bell, Yum Brands would likely not enjoy the same lofty public valuation that it has today. Yum Brands' current narrative as a diversified, high-growth, leading fast food operator across multiple food categories all around the world entirely rests on Taco Bell. Taco Bell is the golden goose that's carrying the American market, and by extension, enabling Yum Brands to continue and lazily position international expansion as both its moat and its primary growth story, nearly 50 years after the opening of China in the 1980s. Everything in business and in life is connected. Every action has a consequence, and every decision has a trade-off. It's a bit unfair to fault the current CEO of Yum Brands for being so conservative, so numbers-oriented, and so profit-driven with Taco Bell when we take into context the situation that he's inherited from decisions that were made decades ago by his predecessors. Taco Bell is the golden goose, and the company can't afford to mess things up given that KFC and Pizza Hut are both barely pulling their weight. The importance of Taco Bell is even greater if we factor in the war in Ukraine, which forced Yum Brands to exit Russia and to cut out one of the largest remaining emerging markets in the world from its international ambitions. The opening of China in the 1980s and the arms race to beat McDonald's in Asia was a decision with enormous ramifications that the company is still experiencing over 40 years later. Yum Brands is already losing the war on two different fronts, in fried chicken and pizza in the US and soon to be Europe. It cannot afford to lose a third.